For most people, you'd say low interest rates are a good thing, right? Especially when you want to buy a house or a car. But for retirees, low interest rates can actually sting. Here to tell us why and to answer other important retirement questions is Ohio's retirement coach, Greg Taylor, the president of Legacy Retirement Group. Always good to see you, Greg.
Always good to be here.
All right, our first Ask the Coach question today is about those interest rates. So let's talk about how big of a deal those are and why is it that they impact retirees differently?
Well, when you're young, you're buying things. So you're purchasing homes and maybe, new automobiles. And typically when you're young, you have to finance your automobiles. So that's one of those things where you're glad when you're young to have those low interest rates. But as you get older and now you've got money in savings, you have money maybe that you want to be somewhere safe, like a CD or something like that. Right now, those rates are just pathetic, less than 1%. So a fraction of a percent interest. So people aren't getting any help as far as having a safe place to put their money and know they're getting a decent rate of return.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so while interest rates remain low, our viewer wants to know, should I put more of my money in the stock market to make up for that lack of return that I'm getting on these safer accounts?
And that would be the obvious thought process of a lot of people, but you have to stay true to your goals and your principles. And what I mean by that is this: you need to have some money that's there for long-term growth. You need to have some money that's there to generate income for you in retirement, but you also need some safe money that's available when you need it.
Right.
So stay true to those principles. Don't put everything in one investment world, so to speak. So even though the stock market gives us the best chance of growth over time, you don't want to put all your eggs in that basket, because if we see a correction, now your safe money is at risk as well.
Right, and risk is the big word in that, especially because when you're getting to that point where you're going to retire, as we're talking about these viewers, that's when you want less money at risk, right?
You really do. You want less money at risk, and now you still need to stay true to your principles. So you need some money growing for you on Wall Street. It's just now the strategy of buying and holding and taking those, big roller coaster ride swings, you can't really afford to do that anymore. So we generally recommend more of a tactical management approach so that you can take a little bit of that dip out of the roller coaster ride.
Okay, makes sense, Greg. All right, number 3 here. Will my expenses increase or decrease after retirement? This is one of those things people always assume they're going to decrease, right?
They do, and I say the expenses necessarily may not increase, but the money you spend may increase, and that's different because now the lifestyle typically changes when you retire, because now you have time to take the kids or grandkids to some destination like Disney World for vacations, or maybe you just want to do some traveling yourself, or you now have time to golf or do whatever hobby or thing of interest is to you. And we find that ends up costing a little more, so the budget should be a little higher when you transition into retirement than even before you retire.
And we all know, right? When you're at work, you're making money. When you're not at work, you're spending it. So if you're not at work, you're going to be pushing it out. All right, last question today. Should I consider long-term care insurance? We know long-term care is expensive, so this is something I think everybody considers, right?
Well, I think you need to consider it, but you have to also consider whether or not you can budget it.
Okay.
Because it can, and understand this, any type of health insurance is going to go up in the future. So understand the cost for long-term care insurance premiums when you take it out is not the end game. So it's not the end cost. So it could go up in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, but at some point those premiums will go up. So if you're struggling to pay for it initially, you probably want to look for alternative ways to protect yourself.
Okay, and Greg, if you have retirement questions, anybody out there, you want them to email you, right? Because we're looking for specifics. We want to help people.
We absolutely do, and what people are concerned about, we want to know so that we can address that here on the show and provide as much valuable information as possible.
All right, the email address to send your question is questions@ohiosretirementcoach.com. Include all your little pertinent information like your phone number, your name, all that good stuff. Make the questions brief, and then Greg will likely answer it here on the show one of these Mondays. All right, Greg, thanks for being here as always. Coming up next on Daytime, we all know inflation exists, but it's not something we necessarily feel in our day-to-day lives. So Greg's sticking around to talk about the real impact of inflation in retirement.